So good to have you join us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee in Seoul. Let's first get started with a look at today's highlights. The U.S. Federal Reserve keeps interest rates unchanged, and it looks like it's in no hurry to make a move soon, while the Bank of Japan surprises markets by putting its stimulus on hold. Nurturing new industries, the Korean government has set out to step up competitiveness in fresh industries, and it has a specific plan on how to achieve that. We sit down with an expert to find out more. So May 6th, which is next Friday, has been designated as a temporary holiday here in Korea. Now, this would clear the calendar for a 4-day weekend, starting with Children's Day on May 5th. The move was approved at a cabinet meeting chaired by President Park Geun-hye this morning, and Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry has submitted the motion, saying the holidays would boost consumption by more than 1 trillion won, or roughly $875 million. And to encourage families to spend domestically, the government is offering various incentives, including baseball game discounts and highway toll exemptions on May 6th, as well as free admission to major palaces, royal tombs, and sports facilities over the 4-day stretch. But not everyone will enjoy this extra day off, because while government offices and schools will honor the temporary holiday, it is optional for private companies. Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics is all smiles. Bumper sales of its new smartphone models, the Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge, led the gains in its first quarter earnings surprise. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
Is Samsung Electronics back on a roll? According to the company's regulatory filing, its net profit came in at over $4.5 billion in the first quarter, up almost 14% from a year ago. Its operating profit surged nearly 12% to over $5.8 billion, while sales rose about 6% to over $43 billion. The results are almost in line with the earnings guidance released earlier this month, and the operating profit beats market expectations by over $1 billion. The strong earnings come on the back of better-than-expected performance of its mobile division, which saw its operating profit rise over 40% from the year before to $3.4 billion.
Strong sales of Samsung's Galaxy S7 led the gains, while its budget A series and J series gave the mobile arm a boost. With Apple's iPhone sales falling and no new releases set for the second quarter, the environment is favorable for Samsung.
Samsung Semiconductor arm, another cash cow for the company, posted $2.3 billion in operating profit, down 10% from a year ago. Still, analysts say it fared relatively well considering falling chip prices and a slump in demand. The company's consumer electronics business also performed well in the first quarter on the back of improved sales of premium televisions. Samsung also said it believes it benefited from favorable foreign currency conditions to the tune of about $400 million as the Korean won traded weaker against major currencies. As for the second quarter, analysts expect Samsung to stay on track for recovery. While they predict the mobile arm will maintain its performance or see a slight decline due to marketing costs, prospects are rosy for the consumer electronics and display business due to seasonal factors as well as demand for televisions ahead of the Summer Olympics. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
And Korea is bracing for a wave of tough reforms that include fostering new industries and stripping away the excess capacity in old ones. This as the country's traditional growth engine exports lose steam, adding dead weight to the pace of overall growth. Our Hwang Jae has this report.
The Korean government is gearing up to overhaul its industrial sector, putting emphasis on longer-term measures than short-term solutions to rev up the economy. During an economy-related ministers' meeting on Thursday, the government pledged to grant the highest level of tax credits of up to 30% on research and development investments that companies make in new industries. While exactly which sectors those are will be decided within the first half of this year, they are likely to involve the Internet of Things, new energy projects, and smart cars. The government is set to offer greater tax credits in other service-related industries as well, like the cultural content sector, and plans to support high-risk new industries by running a fund worth around 1 trillion won, or roughly $870 million. But some experts say these measures are more supplementary than fundamental.
The government has drawn up a financial and taxation support package, but the question is whether this is enough to draw out good players in the market. Will these aid programs encourage companies to jump in and give it their all? That's where we still see the unknowns.
The government's push to foster new industries will go in hand with restructuring the country's old growth engines, such as shipbuilding, shipping, and construction. These sectors have been posting eye-watering losses, dragging down the country's overall recovery momentum. And to better support the reform drive, the government also plans to front-load roughly $5.7 billion more of its budget in the first half of this year. Hong-jip, Business Daily.
And to tell us more about this, we have Professor Kim Se-won from Ewha Women's University joining us in the studio today. So good to see you, Professor.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, so let's start with the bigger picture. It's obviously not just Korea that's digging into this, reform and to increase its industrial competitiveness, because other countries have been stepping up efforts to do just the same amid sluggish global economic conditions.
Right. The new industrial revolution wave is led by the United States, and all major countries like Japan, China, and Germany, and including Korea, are trying very hard to catch up United States. So this is very important nationwide effort, because maintaining competitiveness in new industry and new market determines the destiny of the nations in the future.
Then what are some of the problems that we have been seeing in Korean industries that have led to this new blueprint?
Well, the situation of the Korean economy is located between advanced countries and developing countries like China. So advanced countries like United States is running several steps ahead of us, and while developing countries like China and India almost caught us in every industry's competitiveness.
All right, and like we saw in the report, the Korean government is going to put a lot of emphasis on research and development. So we want to know, how does R&D tie in with future growth?
Well, in economic development class, we are saying to students that R&D investment is simply the engine of the economic growth, because it comes with better technology and better machines, and then it improves the productivity of the workers. And in the end, that increases the income of the workers.
And like you said earlier, a lot of countries are carrying out aggressive R&D measures. So where does Korea stand in that respect?
Well, actually, I have the feeling that it is rather too late to start supporting new R&D investment.
Is that so?
Right. But the Korean government, I'm glad to hear that Korean government decided to adopt the very aggressive and very comprehensive R&D supporting policies. And that will, I think, include tax deductions up to 30%. And financial support from public banks like Korea Development Banks and Export and Import Banks. And there will be further deregulations related to R&D investment.
Then, Korea's conventional growth industries, such as shipbuilding and shipping industries, have been struggling for a while. So what kind of fields are considered new then?
Well, that includes any industry, any new or modified industry that improves the productivity of the workers. Good example is incorporation of IT technology in traditional industry like automobile. So we saw the Google's self-driving cars and KakaoTalk's fintechs are good realistic examples of the new industry.
All right, and there are definitely risks for companies, though, when it comes to investing in new industries, which is why probably the government announced that it will increase tax support for investment in these new areas. Do you think this action will actually help spur a new era of industrial growth then?
Well, actually, I think that tax support, tax benefit only does not work for promoting R&D investment. The new business that has been started should be very risky. So that is a very risky business. That's why Korean companies are very inactive in R&D investment. So there should be something new form of the establishment that the risk should be shared by government and public financial companies like Korea Development Banks.
So you're saying a tax support is not enough.
Right.
All right. Then do you suggest any other ways then?
Well,
for example?
as I said, the fundamental problem of the R&D investment comes with a very high risk. So that kind of risk should be spread out to other part of the economy, like governments and public companies. And the good way to do that is building up a fund for R&D investment by Korean government.
All right. Now, I think the biggest problem that would follow restructuring Korea's core industries is layoffs. So do you think nurturing new industries will be able to kind of absorb some of those problems that could stem from those layoffs?
Well, that is actually a very sensitive problem in Korea because layoff is highly related to social conflicts and political conflicts.
Right.
So therefore, structural reform policy has a high possibility of a failure without providing very special support on traditional industry workers.
All right, so I think we could say that Korea's industrial sector right now is standing at the crossroads of success and failures. So what do you think is the most essential in seeing these industrial reforms through from here on out?
Well, I believe that Korean government decided to start the structural reform in the last moment. So we can start all possible and various R&D investment like United States and China. So there should be something selection and specialization or focus.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has kept interest rates unchanged, citing the need to monitor the global economy and inflation. And it didn't give any hints as to when its next rate hike might come either. Our Park Jong-hong has the details.
It was the third consecutive rate freeze of the year. The Federal Reserve's policy-setting committee decided to keep the lending rates at the current range of 0.25% to 0.5%. While the committee noted U.S. employment and the housing market appear to be improving, it added that the country's exports remain lackluster. In particular, the Fed warned that the U.S. economy is slowing down along with the rest of the world. Reflecting this trend, the Fed's first quarter economic growth estimate was downgraded to the 0% level from the 2+% forecast at the beginning of the year. The Fed also left the door open to a hike in June, implying that it was in no hurry to raise rates. It said inflation was expected to remain low in the near term, but expressed confidence it would rise to its 2% target over the medium term. Some analysts speculate the first rate increase of 2016 may happen in September. Others say that unless there's a rate hike in June, there's a chance it would be pushed back until after the U.S. presidential election. That would mean December at the earliest. Park Jong-hong, Business Daily.
And the Bank of Japan has also kept its negative interest rate steady at minus 0.1%, defying market expectations for additional stimulus. Despite weak inflation and household spending in March, the decision to keep its rates on hold suggests the central bank decided to take more time to assess the impact of its minus interest rate policy. The bank also left unchanged its massive 80 trillion yen asset purchases scheme to continue injecting more money into the economy. Data released earlier in the day indicated that Japan's consumer prices, excluding fresh food last month, slumped 0.3%, the steepest slide since April 2013. The BOJ has decided to postpone the time frame for reaching its 2% inflation target to sometime next year. And the country's benchmark Nikkei 225 closed 3.6% down, while the yen shot up roughly 2% against the greenback shortly after the announcement. It's sarcastically called passion pay, workers being paid low wages and taken advantage of because they're driven and eager to work. A new report shows a troubling trend that young people are increasingly on the receiving end of these wages below the legally allowed rate. Our Eunice Kim has the story.
A protest at the center of Seoul. Famed designer Lee Sang-bong and Lotte Group's Shin Dong-bin were the subjects of ire for allegedly exploiting young people with subpar pay and poor work conditions.
They've been named youth unfriendly for violating young people's human rights by dismissing them in large numbers for reasons of economic hardship.
That's the minimum hourly wage in 2015. By today's foreign exchange rate, it's less than $5. But last year, 1 in 6 young workers were paid less than that, according to a Hyundai Research Institute report. The troubling trend has been on the rise since 2011, affecting 635,000 earners in 2015. That means 17% of all young workers between 15 and 29 years old took home less than what the government mandates. Nearly 43% were university students, balancing jobs to pay for textbooks, food, and rent. 20% were high school graduates, while over 6% were college grads. Most of these underpaying jobs were found in the service and retail sectors, where temporary work is plenty. 4.5% of underpaid young people were working office jobs. The government had released a guideline in February to discourage the so-called passion pay. For example, it limited internships to a period of 6 months. But some say this stops at being a band-aid solution, and there are calls for more substantive change.
We need to foster a high value-added service industry and strong research-oriented small companies. More quality jobs need to come from the public sector as well.
At a time when governments around the world are pledging to raise their minimum wage, Korea needs a solution to honor its existing legal guideline. Left alone in the current extended economic slump, the trend of underpaying the vulnerable will likely only persist. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today, but we'll be back tomorrow with more, so hope to see you right back here at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.